Hello and welcome to SteamPunk. This is your host, SteamPunk Bob, and today is Brütal Legend. Brütal Legend is an affectionate parody slash daydream wish fulfillment of basically all things metal. You're the most competent roadie ever for the least metal band ever. Then you end up in a pseudo-medieval world that looks like you spilled a bunch of metal albums on the floor and drew a map between set pieces. Humanity is oppressed by demons, but the resistance can't get organized. As a roadie, you're used to actually getting things done, so you go about the task of building a band, army. I have a bit of trouble expressing my thoughts about Brütal Legend. It's an action hacky-slashy game, but it also has driving sections and elements of rhythm games. And then later on, it has a heavy focus on real-time strategy, but not even traditional RTS. It's more in line with games like Sacrifice, where you're right with the army, kicking ass and casting spells. Oh, and it's also in the midst of a wide-open sandbox that you can explore to find all kinds of things. This game is pretty much the definition of an identity crisis. I just can't find a focus here that the game does really well. The closest to a focus might be the RTS elements, but in the normal difficulty single-player campaign, I didn't have to do much more than build a bunch of units and say, go kill everyone over there while I cast some support spells on you. The reason I say there might be some focus on the real-time strategy is because the entire second half of the game is RTS battle after RTS battle, and because the game features the stage battles, as they're called, for competitive multiplayer, so there's probably some form of metagame in play for that. The presentation for this game is really slick, though. Our main character is basically Jack Black, both in model and in voice talent, but I'm okay with that because he always seems to be having such fun no matter what he's doing. And that enthusiasm and charisma is pretty catching. There's quite a lot of familiar voice talent here. The upgrade shop is run by Ozzy, and our main villain is played by the only man who could possibly out-ham Jack Black.
The season of pain is upon us.
Tim Curry. Curry doesn't really get enough screen time to really let loose, though. So this does leave Jack Black as our main dish of ham and cheese. The game does have an incredibly varied soundtrack, and each mission has its own theme song or songs, depending on how long they expect the mission to take, with most of these themes fitting their missions incredibly well. Each faction in the game even represents a certain subgenre of metal and has their own set of songs. There's lots of collectibles to find if you have more OCD tendencies than I do. And I'm the kind of person who had to put the unpronounced umlauts on every instance of the title in this script that you don't see. Anyway, the collectibles. I would look for them, but I loathe the controls for your car. Maybe it's the PC port, maybe I just suck. But the steering controls for this thing feel slipperier than a thing that's slipperier than something really slippery. I just can't stomach driving around without a real goal. My car is this unpleasant. The single-player gameplay is adequate. Nothing special at its best, but painful at its worst. There's also some times where it feels like the game missed some exposition scenes, and our character knows things about the world that nobody has mentioned in a scene, which really confused me until much later in the story that he knew. And I still see some things that feel like plot holes you can drive a muscle car through. After all, when the final act of a story only works that way because the protagonist was worse with women than me, we have a problem. I'm the kind of guy who once got rejected by a bag of those conversation hearts. The thing is, I can't truly hate it because it makes everything just so awesome. Take this mission. It's raining death. You're driving a hot rod through a castle that's basically being shelled and having monsters drop out of the artillery. And Dragon Force is playing. This is pretty much badass in a can. But the setting means I need to drive through narrow areas and indoors with the messy driving controls. I had to repeat this mission a minimum of 30 times. That's really a microcosm of my issues with the game. It has moments of pure badassery and being completely metal, but the bulk of the gameplay just feels sloppy to me. If you have one of those video game consoles I hear about, you may enjoy a rental of Brutal Legend. And if it shows up in another Humble Bundle, it would probably be worth throwing a few bucks to charity for it. But really, barring those conditions, it might be something more enjoyable as a Let's Play than an actual gameplay experience. This is SteamPunk Bob, out.